The mastery of the longer syllabled word in the English language is no doubt admirable, but is not equivalent to thinking. And I do believe that thinking is an overrated medium for achieving thought. I believe that there is often an idiomatic confusion in the phrase play of ideas. I think what people mean when they say a play of ideas is a play in which people talk about ideas. A talking ideas play is different from a play where the idea is embedded in the form rather than in the conversation. It is a similar idiomatic confusion when plays are called language-driven that are actually driven by the use of large words. Some language-driven plays might use small words sparingly, Churchill or Florence or Beckett, as the rhythm of the language is as important as the rarity or length of the words themselves. These playwrights use smallness in the service of bigness. Small, forthright words used in the service of condensing experience might have an idea buried in them as large as the most expansive work that wears its intellectualism on its sleeve. The unshed tears of the deeply felt are akin to the unused large words in the service of a thought. Enter Kitty, who desperately wants to be petted. I think what she's saying is that a play of ideas is a play that wants to tell you what it thinks, and it wants to tell you what it believes. And a talking ideas play is a play where you are allowed to discover what it means by following the genre or following the form of the play, how the play is put together, and how the characters respond and react to each other. So I think that's the chief difference that she's talking about. Because the names are so similar, a play of ideas and a talking ideas play, I think it's easy to get them a little confused in there, but I think that's what she's saying. Maybe also plays that are often delivered in a church setting, because there's a certain kind of audience that they're being delivered to, and I think often those are plays of ideas. We're told exactly what conclusion we're meant to reach at the end, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it does beg the question, why did we choose a play form? Why not just preach a sermon or read an essay or, something that is naturally overt as opposed to a play, which is naturally a form in which we have to dig for meaning. So I think in terms of Christian plays, and I only say that because those are the plays that I'm most familiar with. Maybe Mormons do it too, I don't know. Maybe they are a little bit more of a play of ideas business. A talking ideas play, if we're saying that it's going to be a play that allows the form to speak for itself, if it's from a Christian author, I think usually it's going to be a little less accessible. The plays that I know of, just because Christian authors are sort of few and far between that are doing this kind of thing, David Schwingle is writing this kind of a play, and he writes more and more of these the more he gets into his writing career. Gramercy, he wrote a few years ago, was a far less accessible play than most. Earlier on in his writing career, he was writing lots of plays of ideas, but that's because that's the genre that was being asked for. So I suppose it depends on what people are asking for. I am under the impression that churches should just be given such plays and not told what to do with them. But I think it'd have to be something that is not on a Sunday, because very often these plays of ideas are delivered on a Sunday in lieu of a sermon. And if you're going to do something in lieu of a sermon, then you are probably going to also have a little sermonette at the end. I think you have to be really careful about replacing the teaching of the word. And so I don't fault anybody for that, but I think it automatically shoves it into the category of play of ideas. So if you were going to do that, it seems like it needs to be something that's on, let's say, a Friday night. So they come to it expecting a play as opposed to expecting a sermon. Now, they might expect a little conglomerate of the two because it's in a church, but there are plenty of theaters in existence in the world today that are not operating in any other way other than in a church, because that's the only building they can find. So I think maybe if you kind of remove it from the expectation, just by putting it on a different day, you might introduce them to something. I don't know. It's an idea. Make action happen. Throw a conflict at them. Because if you're stuck in a place like that, then very often you have done something like put yourself in a car, or put yourself in a living room setting, and neither of those are bad. They're just really hard to escape from. A car is always hard on stage, just don't do it in general. But a living room is just somebody's house. So either you have to have somebody foreclose on the furniture and they start carrying it out, or the cat barfs on the floor like my cat is doing right now, or I don't know, just throw a conflict in there so there can be real conversation as opposed to just people having analytical discussions about life in the safety of their own home with a cup of coffee and nothing happening. Because a play is about action, and if action isn't happening, then you've probably fallen into a play of ideas. Maybe Grandma should break a hip. Conflict!